Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about political advertising and what appears to be a coordinated campaign to deface and remove certain political adverts, things like billboards, that sort of stuff, public adverts, to deface them. And it appears to be coordinated and directed. Only certain candidates, political candidates standing for office, are being sort of targeted in this way. And also want to just make a commentary on the standard of candidates that are standing. Now, we're talking a federal parliament here, and one would hope that people who are among the best and brightest, or most patriotic, or most dedicated to the welfare of the people, would stand for public office. That would be our hope. I'm not seeing it, and there are some, but inevitably, that mathematically, there's going to be some, but that number is few, and they'd be, given a parliament of or a Congress, if you like to use the American parlance, of 225 or something political representatives in the federal parliament, including both houses. It seems, if there's even 20 that you'd count as patriotic, it wouldn't even be that. Then, or dedicated to believe they're serving the people, dedicated to the welfare of the people. That would be all. The rest are just globalist stooges, political staffers and flunkies, passengers, goons, and people that in the real world couldn't get a fucking job. So anyway, this is just looking at the political posters, and again, the billboard type stuff that's getting defaced. It seems to be, if I've read it correctly, only the political parties that oppose mass migration and oppose the climate change thing being forced on us. So now those are the two big globalist things. I mean, the globalists want those, and they'll kill. They don't care what collateral damage is created by pursuing those objectives. So it seems odd that only the parties that support mass migration and support the climate change agenda, that only those posters are not defaced. So we can surely reasonably conclude from that the defacing of posters, tearing down of political posters is organised. And another thing is, now the people that have been sort of caught, they seem to be working for a small group of NGOs that are very active, hand in glove with supporting the globalist agenda and furthering it, and providing street activists to scream and shout on demand, and so on. So it's reasonable to assume from that these NGOs are being directed by the globalists to deliberately interfere in an election. Now, maybe it's just pure coincidence. Maybe they just ran out of spray paint before they got to the other candidates that support globalization. Maybe it was something like that. Maybe there was a random pick of billboards, and they just happened to randomly pick only those politicians that oppose. And by the way, these aren't politicians that oppose migration. Far from it. They oppose mass migration. They just want migration based on skills and a desire of the people that come to the West or come to Australia, a desire to assimilate and integrate into the local population, local majority population. And so that's hardly a radical position. but for some reason that terrifies, annoys, irritates, and drives the globalists crazy. Because if you want skilled migration, then you're Hitler. And if you want to wait until solar and wind or alternative energy technology is cheaper than the existing energy we've got and more reliable. If you just want to wait for that technology to appear, which will happen over the next 25 to 45 years, then again you're Hitler, fascist, Nazi, Hitler, and so the positions that these other political parties have, which are the smaller ones, are hardly radical or outrageous. I mean, far from it. But they're nonetheless targeted because they're an inconvenience to the globalist project. Now, it's against the law to do that sort of thing. It's against the law for any organised group to be paid or instructed or directed to do things like that. But for some reason, nobody wants to take any action on it. The bigger parties whose material isn't being defaced, they kind of seem okay with it. Maybe it was a couple of sort of excitable young college kids that got a bit out of control. Hey, what's wrong with that? Hey, weren't you high-spirited when you were a kid? Yeah, just let it go. But it does seem to be organised, and it does seem to be deliberately designed to fuck up the other parties. And if that is the case, it should be pursued vigorously by law enforcement authorities. Something else that's happening too is that if one of the smaller parties does have some sort of advertising or promotional campaign that is starting to cut through and get traction, then a bit like banning sort of conservative commentators on social media and all this sort of thing, if one of the smaller parties does start to get some cut through and traction, then there's immediately lawsuits start coming in from allegedly aggrieved parties, including, by the way, these same NGOs that appear to be directing these kids to go and deface. So it's not the big parties trying to do this. It's just the NGOs, because they're concerned about democracy. They're only trying to protect democracy. That's why they're doing it. And if you've got any sort of complaints or you think they're up to no good, then you're Hitler. So this seems to be rather strange. There does, I don't think there's much doubt there's a coordinated campaign, not only to silence conservative voices on social media and in the news and so on, but also to make sure that they're harassed and harried and everything is done somewhat covert, but everything's done to try and fuck them up and drag them through the courts, and they can't expend. They haven't got the money to fight those battles, whereas the NGOs seem to have endless torrents of money, and they declare themselves as charities when they're manifestly not. They're serious, major political actors on the stage, but because they support the globalist project, then they're given free rein, a bit like Antifa and so on. Now, coming to the candidates now. I mentioned earlier that you'd expect and want top quality or good quality candidates to engage in this sort of public service. And that's what it is. It's a public service. It's meant to be anyway. They're not meant to be globalist flunkies and stooges. They're meant to be public servants serving the public and serving the public will. And if you look at certainly the ones that I've met, you struggle to find any impressive candidates. Now you get people that are trying hard. You get people whose maybe their heart's even in the right place. You get people who are single issue grievance type candidates, and you get people that think that things should be better, and they're kind of through abject frustration. They're standing for office, but they're people who've got nothing better to do. They couldn't go and get a well-paid job somewhere, or they couldn't go and to do well for themselves outside. So to them, a basic politician's salary is a huge income for them. They'd be 4 or 5 times what they're used to making. But there's none of them. You wouldn't regard any of them as impressive, as in intellectually impressive, well-read across the issues, demonstrating deep understanding of the issues and so on. Some of them just lack the intellectual ability to even do that. The major parties have these generations of staffers, they're senior high school activists, running around waving placards from the age of fucking 10 or something, then they go to do political economy or sociology at some university where, again, they're student activists and writing crappy communist type diatribes in college. Then they get hired into they work for NGOs, then they get into the office of a politician, and then they sort of hang around there as a general dog's body, and then they're given a safe political electoral district as a gift for, I don't know, loyalty perhaps, ideological conformity, something like that. But it's definitely not for intellectual prowess. And you're hard pushed to find any that have got an IQ above 100, really. Well, no, I shouldn't say there are some, but they're not thick on the ground, far from it. So this is the quality. So the quality, and so we're having almost a situation of forced mediocrity, where some of the most mediocre people, and even below mediocre, are sitting in and will be voted into, as in lack of any alternatives, will be voted into the federal Australian Parliament and will constitute the government, or the body politic, and thus the government of Australia. And that's very sad to see that, but that's how it is. Now, it didn't mean that in the past everyone was an intellectual giant or something. They weren't. That wasn't how it was. In the past, there are people that may not have been that bright, but they were absolutely patriotic and committed to bettering the lives of the citizens, and what was best for the citizens. It didn't mean they were always right. Didn't mean they didn't make mistakes. But they at least were very committed to the public service aspect of things, and would want to do nothing that would cause the people harm or the nation harm. And now, again, even if you're not that bright and you've just got that dedication to public service, that patriotism, that want, that burning desire to make the people's lives better, then you're already sort of doing pretty good. I mean, if you can even get that, you're miles in front. Well, we don't even have that. And on top of that, we got people that are far from being bright. Now, some of the folk, the commentators, they say, well, look, in the Parliament of, for example, 1950, only 5% of the people had degrees, and they were all lawyers, by the way. And in the Parliament today, 85% have college degrees. Therefore, it must be a brighter. Well, no. The people who've got the degrees, they got flunky bullshit degrees. The gender studies type stuff that nobody fails in, and sociology, and African American music studies. They're all bullshit degrees, other than a few, and again, other than the lawyers. But even there, arts, sociology, law is a degree people can get now, so you don't have to be a towering genius to get that. So I don't believe that if it is brighter, the Parliament today, clever, and it's only by the tiniest measure. But let's assume, let's give them that and say, okay, they're all a bit brighter now. But they've all lost their patriotism. They've all lost their dedication to the Australian people. They've all lost their desire to deliver public service. They've all lost their commitment to making the lives of the people better. And they just simply don't care about the implementation of the globalist policies and the collateral damage it could. They sneer at white people here, lower middle class and working class white people are just sneered at. They're not even the shit on their shoes. And that they're meant to be our leaders, the people that are supposed to be directing the affairs of the nation. They're far more concerned with bringing in, hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of Indian peasants into this country without even asking the people if that's what they want or if they approve of it. So it's not government by consent of the people anymore. It hasn't been for quite some time. And on top of that, we've got mediocrity, I believe, at all levels, and that's a great tragedy. And the decline in our standards of living in every aspect is a manifestation of that mediocrity. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.